Andrew, thank you very much for joining us today on CISO Talks. It's really appreciated. Perhaps you could just start by explaining what you do and what your company does. That'd be really helpful, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's Andrew Shikiar. I serve as an executive director at FIDO Alliance. FIDO Alliance is a consortia of over 250 organizations worldwide who are working together to create open standards for strong user authentication. In addition to creating specifications and standards, we run certification programs and market education programs. But fundamentally, what we're aiming to do is help move the market, writ large, from being dependent on knowledge-based means of authentication, namely passwords, to methodologies that are more possession-based and more decentralized in nature, letting users authenticate using the devices that they have in their hands every day.
And why does that matter? Like, what's the real issue? I think we know, but from your perspective, what is the real problem with that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Those who know FIDO Alliance, associate us with going passwordless and moving beyond passwords, which is true. But really, the reason that FIDO was founded and the cause we're trying to address is that of data breaches. Data breaches are an ongoing plague to businesses and consumers worldwide, and the vast majority of data breaches, and also the vast, a large number of the kind of the new breed of attacks, including ransomware attacks, are caused by knowledge-based credentials. So a lost password, a stolen password, a breached password, a phished password. Time and time again, when you hear about a breach, first you're shocked by, yes, another 100 million, 200 million accounts are breached. And then you look into what happened. Well, oftentimes it was a password. Maybe it was left in a text-readable file somewhere, or maybe it was stolen from the dark web, or maybe it was password, which is too often the case. People have horrible password habits, and technology is not quite there to help people help themselves. So ultimately, we need to move beyond these kind of human readable shared secrets.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, because I think that one of the things that we quite often talk about on CISO Talks is like getting back to the basics and doing some of the fundamentals right. And I think that you see a lot of organizations out there that spent millions and millions and millions on security, and yet some of the fundamentals just aren't there. They're just not right. Some of the basics aren't right, and addressing something so simple as the password could massively reduce risk, massively reduce the issues. And yet, I think we see too many instances of people relying, as you say, like on passwords, but even the password strength, the types of passwords people are using are usually terrible, and they're sharing them. I mean, I've even seen this within security teams and people sharing admin passwords. I'm like, come on, we should know better than that. So I definitely think that we need to force the issue. So I definitely think it's a good cause. And how do you think that it's changed? Like, what kind of an impact do you think FIDO is having on this? And have you seen the market change at all?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was in the identity space at really the inception of this part of the kind of industry. So I was involved in identity management way back in 2001. It was 20 years ago now. And then I was out of this space for around a half dozen years, from around 2009 to 2016. And when I came back, what I found is that there's a lot of the same people talking about a lot of the same concepts, and by and large, there have been some progress on things like federation, but some of the more ambitious concepts really hadn't gained traction yet. However, over the past 2 to 3 years, the pace of adoption of concepts like decentralized identity, like public key cryptography and things like that, are actually starting to take root for a couple of reasons. One is that the technology is now there, and that's at least from our standpoint on the authentication front, that's due to the FIDO standards. Right, so the FIDO standards are supported by every major platform. They're being developed by every major stakeholder. So, sitting around a table, we have Apple and Google and Microsoft and Intel and Samsung and Qualcomm, and really everyone who you want to have building this technology is building the technology.
Mm.
Additionally, it's now supported in every major device. So literally, every device is being unboxed right now. If someone's listening to this podcast, most likely can consume FIDO authentication. So now the technical capabilities are there. And then, of course, COVID came along. And COVID accelerated everyone's digital transformation plans, from multiple years to a handful of months, as all of a sudden they had to protect a remote workforce, protect newly digitized consumers. And that imperative really helped accelerate things as well, in addition to the corresponding attacks. Hackers are very innovative and very aggressive, and they find new ways to attack people. So all these things combine to increase the imperative and the ability to implement modern identity and authentication schemes. And that ranges for everything from moving beyond passwords to the concept of digital identity wallets, national identity, digital national identities, and things like that. So a lot's happening right now, and I think that coming back to FIDO's FIDO's remit, which is moving beyond passwords, we're seeing really good progress. Again, it's supported in devices. We're seeing companies like Microsoft just last week announced that anyone who has a Microsoft account can ditch their password. You don't need to use passwords now if you're one of the hundreds of millions of people who have a Microsoft account to log into different Microsoft services. So really pleased to see that progress, and I think there's more to come for certain.